Hi, I'm Sarah. We have another wonderful post-season interview today. Big Brother 23's AZAH is here, our beautiful entertainer. She was the chef. She came in third place, you guys. I am so excited. Please welcome Miss AZAH.
Hello,
Hello.
what's up?
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy to talk to you. I don't think you're as into astrology as I am, but I felt very connected to my fellow Sagittarius.
I love astrology. I definitely, it's my what do I call it? Like a hidden, guilty pleasure. Guilty pleasure. I
Uh-huh.
definitely subscribe to it. So I feel like I subscribe to everything that a Sagittarius subscribe is. So I think we got a connection over here.
Yeah, no, you are a Sag to a T. We can't hide our face. That's just not going to happen. You struggled with that in the house, and I was like, oh, I feel you. But you do have a Scorpio moon, and that's a little different. And that we saw, a Sagittarius isn't going to cry, but
Oh,
that Scorpio moon, you
okay,
felt your feelings.
yeah. Yeah, I will cry now. The funny
Yeah,
thing is, I cried in the house more in 3 months than I have in the past probably 2 years.
I believe that. Oh my goodness. It feels like it was quite a roller coaster for you. And I do want to talk about your journey because I really did relate. You came in, you had a great social game. I mean, you're talking, hanging out with everyone, making friends. And then what was it, day 3 or 4? You like crashed in that bed and had to sort of recharge, sort of go down and rest. Did you realize it was going to be so emotionally draining like that?
I didn't, honestly. I'm someone who is actually quite social outside of this house.
Mhm.
So it was very interesting to find that I had so many times where I had to recharge and just I kind of got into my introverted side. What had me kind of in that third and fourth day kind of do that was it was such a high level stress environment that wasn't really put forth on the screen, with Frenchie's targets changing every 2 minutes, and then the alliance that I just got in the cookout and Kyla being put on the block. And it was also at that time too, Frenchie wasn't kind of shut me out and wasn't giving me any game information. But I
Mhm.
could sense and see that alliances were building and people outside my team were getting closer to Frenchie, and it was and everyone was in his frenzy to make him happy. And I just had to just retreat away and sit down and just kind of get myself out of everything to kind of center myself. So it ended up kind of making people think that I was, a little off to myself, but I really did
Mhm.
need that to kind of center me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yes, I agree. It didn't show it in the episode that you've watched back, but we watched it on the feeds. We were there with you. It was so we didn't sleep that first week.
Yeah.
Frenchie, his HOH train was like none other. He was going frantic. So I feel you. It makes sense. Those of us who watch the feeds, we totally get it. So then besides having these like introverted moments, you kind of also had a journey. You went on a few journeys, AZAH.
I
You
did.
had a realization that you weren't going to be able to play this sort of cutthroat game that I think you were coming in with. What was that discovery like, and how did you work through
Yeah,
it?
it was interesting for me. It's so interesting because I'm a super fan. I've watched all the seasons and I kind of came in with the fact that this is a game and you got to do what you have to do. But really, coming in and with the cookout, it's became more than a game. It became a mission. And
Hmm.
for me, I came in, I started a female alliance immediately. The first week, the Kingslayers with me, Tiffany, Claire, and Brittany. And because of all Frenchie was doing so many things, and I was trying to get him to stop, but he wouldn't. And I
Hmm.
knew that Brittany was completely clueless in all of that.
Hmm.
Frenchie built Frenchie's Kisses and didn't even include Brittany, but I had created that female alliance. But the next week, she gets put on the block, and due to suspicions that she started a female alliance.
Right.
And I had started a female alliance. And Frenchie had started Female Alliance and didn't even include her. And I had so much guilt from that.
Mm.
By the time the next week rolled around, she was getting put on the block again. she had been so confused and kind of just full of like turmoil, trying to wonder what things were happening. And
Yeah.
that's kind of when I realized, I was like, okay, if I'm going to be playing this game, I don't think I can deal with the guilt of, other people getting, just being thrown under the other people being thrown under the bus because what I done. So I
Sure.
decided to always hold myself accountable for everything that I did, and that's when I started in this adaptive shift to a transparent gameplay. That was
Mhm.
just, I would let people know who my targets were. I would let people know, even if they're HOH, if I was planning to put them on a block, and because I wanted to hold myself accountable, it actually really honestly ended up working in my favor, and helped build me up a lot more socially in the house, while I was still considered and seen as the bottom.
When you this is how you phrased it on the feeds. You had to step outside to go to, I believe it was the wild card comp or one of the comps. You stepped outside. And when you came back, you said, new perspective. Inside the house, AZAH, different person. I got a game. Here we go. Was that like another step along this journey?
Yeah, so that was a little bit later in the journey where
Mhm.
I realized that I had, when I stepped outside to in production to play the wild card game, I saw that the world was completely whirring and going on like normal. And I realized that these were two completely different realities that were going on. And I had been playing this game still as outside AZAH.
Mhm.
And it was really, that was around the time that Brittany had left, that I was like completely committed to getting us to the six, and I needed to get back to inside AZAH is different from outside AZAH. Outside AZAH
Mhm.
can do a lot of things and react emotionally and do things, but inside AZAH, while I'm still myself, I need to do what's needed to do to get to the next goal, which at that time was getting everyone to six.
Yeah. And speaking of Brittany, because obviously she wasn't a part of the mission, was your sort of connection and loyalty to her a conflict? You were very close to her, although obviously you weren't going to take her, to the
Yes.
six.
It was, I wouldn't know if it would say it was a conflict. There were, I will try to describe my different emotions. One, I'm an empath, so
Hmm.
I always sense and feel people's feelings, and I put that burden on myself. I
Yeah.
could sense that Brittany was having a little bit difficulties kind of fitting in and things like that.
Hmm.
And I also saw that she was kind of being a scapegoat for a lot of things that she hadn't done. And that's where
Hmm.
that empathy came from in the first couple weeks. When it came to around jury time, for example, when I threw the competition to Brittany, it was honestly more for survival. I wasn't in the
Hmm.
royal flush. Kylan actually told me about the royal flush in week 5, but I
Right.
wasn't in the royal flush. But I could still sense and see, even before I knew about it, that the jokers were left out of a lot of conversations. And if Brittany were to leave and go home, that gave open avenue for me and Derek Big D to be put on the block. And
Hmm.
in order for my safety and 2 cookout members, I felt it was necessary to keep Brittany along as long as possible. So when
Right.
we did OTEV, because of the high rollers room and the bets that were placed, Big D put a bet on Brittany, which if she
Hmm.
won, gave us opportunity to get everyone's safety. So that's why I threw it to
Right.
her from a strategy
Yeah.
decision of, okay, if she wins, we're all safe. That's another week that, yes, they might use Brittany as a pawn, but we're not going to have to risk his safety going home, because I felt as soon as Brittany was gone, me and Big D would kind of be left naked. And as people who
Hmm.
hadn't won competitions yet, we were open avenue to be used as pawns.
Right. Right. So all of this like fierce loyalty you had to Brittany and Big D, it just kind of came because you were put on the Joker's team. Do you think if you had been put on a different team, that it would have been just totally different? Like your loyalty would have been to those teammates?
I think so. I think definitely me and Brittany and me and Big D had a connection, most definitely.
Hmm.
But I do have loyalty. I do. I guess that is the type of game that I play. Also, being that we kind of had been, I don't want to say a punching bag, but for so long, when people go through kind of hard times together, they end up sticking
Yeah.
together.
Right.
So that's what kind of showed, and at least amongst the whole house, that everyone's like, all right, the Jokers kind of stick together. But I
Hmm.
definitely would have shown that same loyalty, I would say, to another team, definitely, if I were on it.
Yeah. I mean, you guys were just kind of I mean, you were not, because of Frenchie and his week 1 HOH, you guys all of a sudden became targets and punching bags, and like your team, that's a tough position to be in, especially early in the game. It makes sense.
It was. And
Mhm.
I will take complete responsibility on my part too. I was labeled as aggressive. I'm not an aggressive person at all, but I was also labeled as emotional. I am someone I'm in tune of my emotional feelings, and
Right.
possibly my in my empathy crying or things like that probably, set a bigger target on my back, but also kind of made me not able to get into a lot of the strategic conversations that I would like to, because people weren't certain how I would react to things. So I'll take accountability on my own self on things. But yes, with the fallout with Frenchie, it really was Joker's trying to figure out and how are we going to make jury, because it doesn't look like we're about to.
What would there, let's just say fantasy world, was there a team that you would have picked? Like if you couldn't have been on the Jokers, which team would you be
I
on?
have to say, like, because I thought I've been asked, how do I have any regrets or would I put be on another team? I think that I was, I think it was a good fit for me to be on that team.
Yeah.
I think I mean, there was me, even though me and Frenchie had a fallout the first week, the second week we really connected. Um, it was difficult, I would say, in terms of being that punching bag, but I don't think I would, if I did this journey again, I think I would do it the same exact way. I mean, I grew to love my Jokers. I mean,
Yeah.
you go through a lot of stuff together. You're just like, yo, I'm gonna claim the Jokers till I die. Like, I love them. So I would still, yes, it would be interesting to see how I would have, done on another team. But I love being a Joker. I loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of seemed like everyone sort of vibed and like made their team really fit for each
Yeah,
group. It was
yeah,
interesting to see how that
definitely,
worked out.
definitely.
Now your sort of journey that brought you to this self-awareness, this sort of blunt play, where you were just telling people to put you up, take you out, whatever. I'm coming after you. It was very Dr. Will. I'm gonna go ahead and say it, you guys. He did the same thing. He was like, whatever, get me out of here. And no one got him out. And look, it kind of worked the same way for you.
It did get me to final three. Now, I mean, that's a lot to be with Dr. Will, which is, that's but I do see how that strategy works. And I say that in this sense. For example, week 4, when Christian got HOH, everyone had Christian in his mouth the week before, and they were the only team that had all 4 players. It's
Mm-hmm.
quite obvious that that team is going to be targeted. And
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that he had asked every other person, and nobody brought him up. And I was just like, to me, I'm just like, this makes no sense. Like, obviously he's going to be a target. I knew that as Jokers, we would probably be targets because we were being put up. So I was just like, you know what? Yeah. I mean, I haven't been able to talk as much game with you. I was going after this person, but I was going to put you on a block too, just because we don't have that relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I discovered and realized that there's something that's so there are 2 currencies very powerful in this game. The one is power, which I didn't have a lot of, but the other is
Mm-hmm.
trust.
Yeah.
And when you're able to be transparent and showing that vulnerability, it kind of catches people off guard and makes them feel like they need to be vulnerable with you too.
Mm-hmm.
And it led to him completely sparing me that week.
Mm-hmm.
And even after voting him out and telling him the truth about voting him out, still Alyssa wanted to work with me, which was great.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I mean, it's a total Sagittarius thing. So again, I was like, yes,
Thank
just
you.
tell them to their face.
Yeah,
And they're like,
yeah. Just
okay,
let him
great.
know.
We'll
Let
just
him know.
keep her around. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about your relationship with Tiffany? I mean, you guys seemed at the beginning, we were like, oh, we love them. They're sisters. They're having so much fun together. And then it was like, oh, we don't know what's happening between these two.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that relationship. Was it a struggle? I know you care for her.
Yeah, it was up and down. It was up and down. I think with how I don't know. One thing I'm trying to understand about this game too is, I guess I even me watching all 21 seasons, I kind of thought that in the house there were only like 1 or 2 alliances. I
Uh-huh.
didn't know that there were like 100. And like, I in this season, like, I'm coming to find, leaving out the house, that there were like so many alliances. And so when we created the Kingslayers, I kind of thought that that was it. But
Yeah.
Tiffany was still, open to creating things, and I didn't have that understanding of that that this was the type of game that we were playing. So we did have that miscommunication, and it did unfortunately lead to us being at odds for some weeks of it was hard to it was honestly just a bit difficult for me to kind of get to her, and with me having difficulty getting to her, and it was difficult for me to kind of get with the other cookout members as well too. So I kind of felt alone. But what I'm happy about is that we did end up being on the same page. And even in this end of the day, even when she left, she knew, even in those times, I might have vented to, Derek F at times with things, but I never tried to make her a target. I never even told Brittany to go after her. I never did anything to push that, because at the end of the day, I always did respect her, and I wanted her to stay as long as she could, 2 to 6. I'm just happy on my part that everything ended up going well. And on my part, I never did anything in terms of trying to put a target on her back, because at the end of the day, that was someone that's my sister, and sisters fight. They go back and forth, they fight, but they always get together. And as somebody who's one of 5 girls, I'm quite used to that.
You got it. Okay. So good. Yeah. I mean, we saw you at the end after Tiffany was out, saying, yeah, you loved her. You would like her still around. You didn't want her out. I mean, you definitely had those conversations with Xavier and Big D when she was on the block. Like, could you guys keep her? Was there, I mean, I feel like your hands were tied at that point, because Xavier and Big D were never going to keep her. Yeah. Was there anything before that, though, between you and Tiffany that could have happened to make the end game any different? Or were you always sort of going to ride with Xavier and Big D?
No. So in week 9, when she was HOH, she did approach me. And she asked me whom I trusted. Now, I had already had the final 3 with Big D and X, but I would have been definitely open to working with Tiffany. There are like Tiffany, and she knew that as well too. I approached Tiffany with the final 2 earlier in the season, and that was when we weren't, on the same page. So she did turn it down, but I did want to work with Tiffany, and I knew, though, at 6, depending on who won HOH, if a girl had won HOH, I think the final 4 would have looked like me, Big D, Hannah, and Tiffany. But with the guy winning HOH, a girl went out, and the kind of trend kind of went towards that way. But I think things would have gone differently if I had won HOH, or she had won HOH, or Hannah had won HOH. Now, I could be being delusional and look back and see feeds and see that was something completely different. But I think it really was dependent on who won at that 6. If it had been her or me or Hannah, I could definitely have seen us riding to the end.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We knew coming to 6, we knew once it was you guys were going to make it to final 6, it really was kind of split, girls versus guys. The guys were very much wanting Tiffany and Hannah out. And so had Tiffany and Hannah won, or you, maybe, they would have been safe. But as soon as it was either Xavier or Kylan, they were going to go after Tiffany. Would honestly, I don't know if you know this, but Kylan had positioned himself really well that week before when he was, he made the deal with you. Well, that was when he was HOH, but he had started taking information over to Xavier that Tiffany was telling him. So if he had kept Tiffany and not gotten her out at 6, he would have been able to slid like further.
I said that in the
house. You
yes,
did.
I definitely.
And I tweeted it out, and I said, yes, AZAH, yes.
I still stand by the fact my only blind spot in the game was Big D, but I did have a good read in the house, even if I didn't know alliances and things. And I said that. I said his mistake was taking out Tiffany, because even though Tiffany might have, planted seeds or things against him, Tiffany was still always riding for him. When Tiffany came to me in her HOH and was trying to go over things, and I told her, Kylan, that's who I want to go after. That's who I think would go after me, this and that. She had stated, I don't want Kylan to go. Like, Kylan is someone who I want to keep around. So I knew that that's something that she wanted. Honestly, I think his best thing to do would have probably been taking out me or possibly Hannah. I think
Mhm.
even if he took me out, yes, it would have been a girl down, but he would have had Tiffany still riding with him, would probably take out
Mhm.
X or go after Big D and Hannah as well too. That final three would probably look more like Kylan, Tiffany, and Hannah.
Yeah, I agree. If he had tried to take away a number from either Tiffany or Xavier by taking you or Hannah out,
Yep.
or Big D, but he had Big D in his pocket. So,
Hmm.
yeah, would have been a different story for
Yeah,
him.
definitely.
It's
But
interesting
it
to
kind of
see.
benefited me. So
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh, exactly. So when you did finally win HOH, if you had not made that deal with Kyland, would you have taken him out? I mean, you talked about it for
oh,
weeks.
absolutely. Most definitely. Most definitely. Most definitely. I had been screaming Kyle's name since week 6. Even people outside the cookout knew that I was targeting Kylan.
Yeah.
It was quite apparent. But I think people need to see, I wish people could just see things from my point of view, because I'm seeing things
Mhm.
that, like, oh, why'd she make this decision? I did not have a lot to be able to say on my resume at the final 2. But what
Right.
I had at that time was I hadn't been on the block, and I had been honest with people and had kept up with 100% of my deals. And with
Yeah.
us not knowing out there if the jury was bitter or not because of the
Mhm.
cookout, I needed to keep up with 100% of my deals to be able to have something to say when I got to final 2.
Sure.
So when Kylan came to me with that deal at week 6, um, I at week 5, I actually was planning a backdoor plan. If Hannah had won, I would have put Kylan up and would have just gone against my word and done it. But I decided to honor it because at that point, that's all I had on my resume, which
Mhm.
was, not touched the block yet and kept up with 100% of my deals. And I wanted to keep that because I was so close to getting to 3 and possibly getting to 2 to be able to say that at the end, I felt would give me some merit amongst the jury.
Yeah. It makes sense. I was not excited about it, but it made sense at the time. Christian, thank you for the super chat. He's asking you, why didn't you put up Kai next on your HOH? Well, I was never going to see you put up Xavier. That wouldn't have happened.
Well, so I had a final 3 that I had approached Big D and Xavier in week 7. Now, one thing people also need to know is I was very aware that I was not a hot commodity in the 6. People were not running to me with deals, okay? I pretty much knew that at the 6, I was probably going to be the first or second to go just because I'd be an easy number to take out. I
Mhm.
approached them with that deal with the understanding, we both had an understanding, me and X, that if I won HOH, I would take Big D. If Big D won, he would take X because they had a final 2 that I actually was aware about. And if
Right.
X won, he would take Big D. And that was my shot. I felt my best shot at winning the game.
Yeah.
Um, because I already had that final 3, and Kylan just came to me with that deal and kept me off the block, which I was very appreciative of because
Right.
I hadn't touched a block yet. And that's a great thing to be able to say at the final 2. I had
Yeah.
to keep up with that because Hannah was the only person that did not give me a deal. So
Yeah.
Hannah had to be my target that week, and I had to put them up. But I definitely was thinking of putting Kai and X on a block. Those are one of the scenarios that I went over when thinking for the next week if I were to win HOH. But
Mhm.
I decided to go against that because I didn't want Kai to have any type of reason to put me on the block at 4, just because I showed him that I kept up with my end of the deal.
Right. Right. So you got yourself to final 3. You were in a pickle with these 2 guys. So you really had to win out there at the end. You had to go for that
Yep.
final HOH. And like we already knew, you're, heart on your sleeve, face on your face. You looked just absolutely devastated when you lost that final HOH. Can you walk me through those feelings? I can't imagine what that's like.
Yeah, it was this is a moment I've been preparing for since week 7. I
Hmm.
knew that this was the ideal final 3 I had because I knew from then, like I said, I wasn't a hot commodity.
Hmm.
I looked over scenarios with every single person. With Tiffany and Hannah, they definitely had more pull and jury than I did. Yes, I was cool with Derek, and less I was cool with Claire. But if I were next to them, I knew those were guaranteed votes for them. I knew, however, on the side of Big D and X that I could have more pull with Derek, even with me not winning competitions, I could possibly have more pull with Claire as well too, and those could help me to win my case.
Sure.
So this was I had been thinking about this for so long as to how I would get here. I had come up with all sorts of different types of ways to study because I knew that the last one was mental. That last week was a very stressful week for me as I was rolling through different decisions. But I will not lie, the fact that it was one question and that it was Brittany's just like,
Oh,
oh my gosh. And it was just more, it's a lot of emotions that you go through. And being a last juror, you don't have an opportunity to kind of rest off of them. So, after being whisked off and meeting Julie, you immediately meet the jury and then you immediately vote. And as you know, with my heart on my, on my face, it was just, I was still reeling in the shock coming out of this house, being met with people I hadn't seen in weeks, and dealing with the fact that you were this close to winning, and you don't have it anymore. It was difficult. It was definitely difficult. And it took some time even after leaving for me to kind of be able to process and adjust and things like that. But it was hard. I won't even lie. It was hard.
I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. Thank you for the super chat, William. In hindsight, AZAH, do you regret trusting Big D?
I will say that my blind spot was Big D. I think Big D definitely, I still need to look back. So like I said, I might be delusional saying this. I think he did have a level of loyalty to me up to a particular point. Right. But at the end of the day, I think he did want to roll with the guys. I think, I mean, I don't know if I could say I regret trusting Big D, because I will definitely say that he was my blind spot. But thankfully, when we got to 4, Xavier still held up his part of the deal. And what I guess with me being a weaker player and one he thought would have a more big chance of beating, even though he knew I wouldn't have taken him if I wouldn't have taken him if I won, he decided to go ahead and take Kylan out. I think I will say is that Big D was definitely a blind spot for me, because I was blindly loyal to him. And I just knew that I thought that in terms of pecking order, we were best friends, and it was X and then me. I didn't know it was X, then Kylan, then me.
Right.
Or really honestly, X, then Kylan, then Big D, then me.
Yeah, right.
That's the one thing I would say was my blind spot. I didn't pick up on that until much, much, much too late.
Yeah, I think you're right, because you guys were best friends. He was rolling with you, but up until a point. He had other people in front of you. And I don't know how much has happened after the show, but I do want to just state for the record, he never dragged you along. He did not make moves for you. He went on the block one time instead of you, but that was because Kylan manipulated him to volunteer. It didn't actually. It wasn't, but he doesn't know he was manipulated. So anyway, I just want you to know.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've had a lot of insecurities in my gameplay, but the one thing I definitely can say is that I thank the cookout in total for being able to help all of us to get to the 6. But I'm always going to still be proud of what I did in terms of, I might not have been in many alliances, but I did work to build genuine relationships with people outside the cookout that it was difficult in the jury phase for them to think of putting me up. Think people like Claire, people like DX, people like SB, who even though I was, for the cookout wanted her out, still, might have thought about putting me as a pawn, but didn't put me up. And those weren't things that were done that was from social game. That was from people realizing that they could trust me. That was from building that profile as a trustful person in the house so they wouldn't put against. So thank you for that. And I'm very proud of what I've been able to do I'm proud of my accomplishment of getting to 3rd. And I'm always going to be thankful for the cookout for getting us all to 6. But I'm never going to, as a woman, I'm not going to let myself be battered or put down as to what people think that I might not have done. I'm very proud of what I did, and I'm very proud that I got to 3rd.
Good to hear. It was very hard for us to watch that last week for you,
Oh,
and
thank
we
you.
wanted you to hear us, but you were getting it. You were standing up for yourself, and you were realizing it that,
Thank you.
wait, no, I did do my own stuff. So you are correct.
Thank you.
Was there any last minute hope when Xavier won that last HOH that he was going to change his mind and take you?
Honestly, no. I think you saw on my face. As soon as I
Mhm.
lost, I knew what it was. I literally knew what I signed up for in week 7.
Mhm.
And I knew Xavier was someone who was winning comps left and right. I didn't know he was a lawyer, but I knew that he was, a threat in terms of he was able to win competitions.
Mhm.
And I studied as hard as I could, for that, preparing for that moment. But I also told him, in my respect to Big D, because he was my best friend, if anyone notices on the feeds, I didn't try to game to create some type of deal with X. I told
No.
him, honor your deal if you need to. This is what I'm doing out of my personal conviction and preference, but you go ahead and you honor your deal. I didn't make any type of effort to game with him or to do anything. And um people might not see it, but we did have conversations of, this could have been him gaming me, whatever, but he did have conversations of, I do feel the person who won the first and second HOH should be the people who are at the end, and he has thought about taking me, if he were to win, for other reasons. But he asked for my opinion if it mattered, and I told him, you should take Big D, because I wanted to respect that because of the deal that I had made in 7, what they had signed up for. It didn't feel right for me to try to change my mind after week 7 with the deal I knew I signed up for. So for me, it was do or die. Now, I needed to go for that. And if I didn't get it, that was my one shot. So
Yeah.
I didn't have that hope that he would. When I lost that HOH, I knew what it was and I knew what I'd signed up for. And that's where the crush of defeat kind of came from that.
Yeah. I have a few questions from Twitter here. Hunter Bradley Boy wants to know if you would have eliminated Xavier if he had won that final HOH.
From week 7 up until that, the week before last, I would have. And I made
Yeah.
that exceptionally clear to him. He knew from the beginning
Mhm.
that I would do that, because I wanted to play a transparent game.
Yeah.
But there are in that last week, it's just the 3 of us, and you have a lot of time to think.
Mhm.
And I had been focused when we got to 6 on getting to 3. But when I got to 3, so many thoughts started going in my head. This season was different from any other season because this was crowning an African American winner. And for African Americans, the standard is set extremely high. And I wanted to make sure that when I said X didn't deserve 3rd, it's not that I said that he deserved to win. It's
Mhm.
that I wanted to make sure with jury that they would have the choices that they would have, they wouldn't be able to say anything against. So
Mhm.
for me, playing an honest game and keeping up with 100% of my deals, yes, I might not have been the most competitive person, but
Mhm.
there wouldn't be as much that people would be able to say against me winning, besides the fact I wasn't as competitive. And in
Mhm.
his case, he had a social game, he won competitions, he did things. And I would rather have had the jury decide between us. And I had a case for myself at Final
Yeah.
2 because I know how to talk, I know how to speak, and I can sway people on my
Mhm.
side. But I wanted that choice to make sure to be a choice that, from just to know immediately that whomever that winner is, people aren't able to question.
Mhm.
And that's just something that I had in reflecting over those last couple weeks. And for me, that with this, me being the super fan that I am,
Mhm.
that was more important to me than winning $750,000, making sure that that representative is one that no one will be able to question things about. If that representative
Right.
is me, it's somebody who kept up with her deals and didn't lie and, was that type of person. If it's him, people can't say as much against. So that's where that
Mhm.
reasoning came from.
Mhm. I understand. I gotcha. Paul Wright, if you could have played any other season of Big Brother, which one would you pick? Ooh,
I think
you're a
I would
super
pick
fan.
6. That's my favorite season.
Oh, yes. Holy
6 is
moly.
so fun. I mean, it's so, and also too, like this season, I love this season. I love that I'm a part of this season, but with it being mission but focused, um,
Mhm.
it really took away a lot of the, who knows, maybe I would have been manipulative and fun if we weren't playing for something so important and serious.
Right.
I
Mhm.
wouldn't have treated it as much of a mission. I would have treated it as a game, you know? So
Mhm.
if it was season 6, who knows? Maybe it would have been that person making like 100 alliances and just be like, ah, whatever, because it's a game. I'm playing human chess.
Yeah.
That's it. But
Right.
with the season being the way it was much more difficult for me to do that. So season 6, definitely.
Oh, I love that. That would be so fun. If you had to play this season again, but the cookout didn't exist, who would you have aligned with?
Definitely DX, I think.
Mhm.
I definitely would align with DX. I would have aligned with, I'm trying to think I have to think about what I would align with the first day and before the
Yeah.
cookout even happened. Um, I like the vibes, honestly, that I got from Big D and X. So I think
Mhm.
that would have been something too, but I think I would have made another alliance with them, I think. But I
Right.
definitely feel like DX, I would have. Um, DX, Claire, DX and Claire, and whomever they wanted to feel that they felt that they could include. And then on
Yeah.
another avenue, probably Big D and X. And I'm only
Mhm.
saying that because those were the first 4 group of guys that I met when I came in the house. So I remember
Mhm.
them being people who I was like, okay, these people are cool. And Tiffany too. Me and Tiffany, first day we were like, okay, cool. You know, it's
Yeah.
probably DX, Tiffany, and then maybe on another alliance, Big D and X.
Mhm. Okay. Antoine is asking which competitions from past seasons do you wish you got to play?
I would love to have done face swap. We were
Uh-huh.
studying the
Yeah.
memory wall all season because we thought face swap was going to happen and it didn't.
Right.
And we were mad. I would have
We were
definitely
mad
loved to do
too.
face swap. Definitely.
That's a good one. Yeah, I don't know why that one didn't come in
Nope,
this
it
season.
didn't. I know it didn't.
Who are your top 5 players of all time?
Okay, top 5 players of all time. All right. Of course, Jun Song.
Mhm.
I love her. I don't have as much balls as she does, obviously, but I love her. So we're gonna give June 1. I actually really like Libra. I loved Libra. I know she was the first member of jury, but I just loved how
Mhm.
kick-ass she was, and she was really running that entire house
Mhm.
up until jury. I actually really liked Lisa. In season 3, I liked her because she was adaptive, I guess I would
Mhm.
call it. She was able to slip herself out of situations and remove targets from her.
Yeah.
And she was some of the things that I see, not in my game, but I see some things she did in terms of letting herself seem less threatening in order to get ahead, but winning
Mhm.
when she absolutely needed to. So I really like Lisa. Fourth, I'm gonna say would be who else? Who else? Who else? Who else? I'm going through the seasons. Going through the seasons. I actually liked season 10 Memphis. I know that sounds weird, but I did.
Well,
I
yeah,
liked
it's a
his
different
like
person.
kind of not caring attitude and like he didn't care about putting just in your face. You know, I love
Yeah.
that. And then the fifth I would say would be Kaser.
Oh,
Kaser, yes, he was always out pre-jury, but I love that he had no problem standing up for what he
yeah.
believed in and mobilizing people. And I love it. I love it. So
Yeah.
those 5. I know it's a weird 5 list, but that's my 5.
Yeah, you're really good with the deep reach. I have to imagine Kaser is the best player to never make jury, right? Like he's
Yeah,
just, oh, how do you not love him, you
I
know?
know. I know.
Lyraverse is asking, in the Big Brother house, does the fun outweigh the stress, or does the stress outweigh the fun?
Man, I don't even know. They're both like boom here. Like you have
Mhm.
so much fun in that house with people because you got nothing else to do. So you create all these fun games and things.
Yes,
But
you
the
sure did.
stress was so high. And it's something I'm
Yeah.
only realizing now that I'm outside the house. I did not sleep until 4 a.m. every night. Like I literally could not sleep. My mind was always thinking and worrying and thinking
Mhm.
about the game. Just being in that mindset, like, okay, how do you get to 6? How do you survive? If I'm HOH here, what's going to happen here? Oh no, there's a target here. Oh no, not only your own stress, but if you're somebody that other people kind of come
Yeah.
to kind of unleash their problems and you're an empath, that stuff gets put on you too.
Oh,
So
right.
Honestly, Big Brother was the most stressful and hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm not even joking.
God.
And I've been through a lot of
Mhm.
stuff. I've experienced life, okay? But Big Brother was hard. It was hard. So I had so much fun in that house, but also I was so stressed in that house. As you
Yeah.
can see by the amount of times I was crying.
Yes, it seemed like it was a lot. AZAH's Mystique. How are you adjusting to being back home with your friends and family? A little less stressful, I would hope.
Yes. First, I love that name, AZAH's Mystique.
Right.
Second thing, I'm doing a lot better. Being the last member of jury, I didn't have that time of decompression and debriefing to go to a hotel or hang out with
Right.
jury. I kind of just got thrust into the outside, and it was honestly very, very difficult. You don't realize that because you spend 90 days locked away with only particular people, you literally have to kind of learn to socialize again. I found myself very awkward around people and hyper aware of everything I said and spoke. And I had spent some time in LA, but I knew I needed to get back home and get back to a familiarity to things because I still felt like I was in an alternate reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But came back home. I'm feeling so much better. A lot of those anxious feelings that I was feeling have kind of gone away. And I'm doing so much better now and have a clear head that I can kind of push forward with, this new phase of life I've been catapulted into.
Good. Well, Mind of Yesenia wants to know when your cookbook's coming out.
I will let you guys know. I have a lot of things in the works for you guys. I was so
Yes.
pleasantly surprised to see that you guys love my cooking on the show.
Yes.
So I'll show you all the things that I have coming up that are coming down the pipeline, okay? I've started a weekly Cooking with Oz every Sunday where I go on Instagram Live and I cook, but I invite BB guests as well too. This week we had Tiffany and Hannah, and next week we're going to have Derek X, okay? I also have, yay, I have a spice line that I'm working on that'll be coming out in the next month. And with that spice line will be a page where I'm showing recipes and how to cook with those spices as well too. So that's another thing that's coming up for you guys. In terms of the cookbook, I am still looking at ways to consider and getting that done because that does take a little bit of time in terms of publication and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but it's coming. Don't worry. And I'm really, really excited for you guys to see all the stuff that's cooking in the kitchen.
Well, good. I mean, I need you on cooking shows, lots of cookbooks. We want all of that for you. Absolutely.
Yay, I love it.
Before I let you go, oh my God. Okay. You were the most entertaining person I have seen in a really long time. Like feeds. Okay. I just watch the game stuff. I usually, once y'all start doing silly stuff, I take a nap. But you were so entertaining. Your songs, I loved it so much. So I can't believe I'm going to ask you to do this, but would you mind doing a duet with me of the Big Blue Couch?
Of course. Of course. Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Is there going to be a delay or
Probably, but I will.
Okay,
You
right,
you
no
main
problem.
it, and I'll just pipe in.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Bum 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 bum. It's the big blue cow out. It's blue and it's white and it's blue again. Big blue cow. Take a seat, grab some popcorn with your friends. Big blue couch. Bum, 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 bum. Can you dig it, baby, baby? It's Big D, hey, hey. And Alyssa, bum, bum, bum. Come on, y'all. Bum, 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 baby, 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 baby. It's so I'm happy you loved it. Happy you loved it.
I can die happy. That was the best thing that's ever happened. We did it.
Thank you.
AZAH, you're the best. Love you so much.
you.
I hope everything wonderful comes your way. Really enjoyed you.
Thank you, Sarah. Such a pleasure. This is awesome. I love that we talked game. I love that we talked game. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's what we super fans want to do. We want to talk the game. We really appreciate it. Everyone who was live in the chat, I really, really appreciate you hanging out with us, giving AZAH the love. Yes. All right, AZAH, enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Such a pleasure. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.